It's Europa League Matchday 6 taking place from Wednesday, December 11th to Thursday, December 12th. There's a ton of games on the schedule this week. As usual, I've pared it down to 5 games to cover in 2 different parlays. I'll go through all of them here and also leave the picks in a graphic at the end of the video as well so you can see a summary. Let's get into this week's Europa League predictions, picks, and parlays. If you find this video helpful, be sure to help me out by giving the video a like, subscribing to the channel, and or sharing your picks down there in the comments as well. It all helps out in spreading the word of the content on YouTube. So parlay number 1, we go to Malmo and Galatasaray. Malmo, they're 30th right now in the Europa League table. They're 1-0-4. They've been outscored 10-4 in the tournament. They did, though, coast to a Swedish league title this season. Their 4th win in Sweden in the last 5 seasons. Galatasaray will come in favor, though. They're 4th overall in the Europa League. They're 4-1-0. This Gala team quickly becoming one of my favorite teams to bet. They rarely lose. They also rarely don't score. Well, often they do concede. They've been a great over and or both teams to score team. Their Europa League score so far, 3-1, 2-2, 4-3, 3-2, 1-1. On one hand, the 13 goals scored, tied for the most so far, but the 9 goals that they've allowed are the most of any team inside of the top 21. This has not been a good tournament this year. Recently for Malmo, 2-1 win over Karabag is their only Europa League win in 11. They've already struggled versus teams weaker than Galatasaray, losing to Rangers, Olympiacos, Ferencvaros, and another Turkish opponent in Besiktas, who's been out of form as well. Gala had drawn 2 in a row, but they just beat Sivasspor 3-2 this weekend. They've extended their undefeated streak in all competitions now to 17 games, where they've also scored in all of those 17. In all 22 games this season across all matches, they've scored in 21 of those, but they've allowed a goal now in 7 of 8 and 12 of 15 recent games. This should be a Galatasaray win. Both teams to score, certainly an option as well. Galatasaray simply to score in a leg of a parlay won't pay much, but is an option for very low odds. For goal-scoring props, Viktor Osimhen, always a good option. He has 3 goals in his last 2 Europa League games for Galatasaray. Shot-wise, he has 25 attempts and 12 shots on target, with 2, 5, and 3 shots on target in recent Europa League games. He scored this weekend in the Turkish league with Icardi out. Also, Yilmaz now injured. He'll surely get plenty of chances in this game. So we can combine these 2 things over at Bet365. Galatasaray to score, Viktor Osimhen to at least have 1 shot on target, so over 0.5 shots on target. That will give us leg 1 of this parlay, dropping the simply Galatasaray to score at -7 or 800 odds, down to a more reasonable -300 for a parlay leg. And we'll pair that up with a prediction in the Ajax and Lazio game. Lazio sits top of the pack right now. They're first, 4-1-0, one of 5 teams still yet to lose, and one of 3 teams with 13 points, but they own the best goal difference, scoring 11, allowing just 2. Ajax aren't far off. They're 3-1-1, sitting 6th, and they actually have a better goal difference, scoring 13 and allowing 3, making their +10 differential the best of all 36 teams so far. Both teams slipped up last round. Lazio had scored multiple goals in their first 4 games before shockingly drawing 0-0 with Ludogorets Razgrad. A 3-1 loss to Parma followed, but they seem to be back on track after back-to-back wins over Napoli, 3-1 and 1-0 in the Coppa Italia and Serie A. The Ludogorets game is just the 2nd time in any competition this season that they failed to score. Ajax suffered their first loss of the tournament, losing 2-0 to Sociedad. Since they won 2-1, drew 2-2, and lost 2-1 in the Eredivisie. They too have scored in nearly every game this season, except the Sociedad loss across all competitions. So we'll bet both teams to score between Ajax and Lazio. We'll pair that up with Galatasaray to score, also meant to have at least 1 shot on target. That'll come in at +104 odds over at Bet365. Let's get to 3 more different games into parlay number 2, starting with Viktoria Plzeň and Manchester United. These 2 have had nearly and it's close to identical Europa League campaigns so far. Both are 2-3-0 with 9 points. Man U seated just above Plzen in 12th versus 13th, based off a slightly better goal differential, as Manchester United has scored 10, allowed 7, Plzen scored 9, and allowed 7. Both also drew their first 3 Europa League games before winning their past 2. The both teams to score has hit in 4 of 5 Man U games, minus a 2-0 win. The both teams to score has hit in 4 of 5 Plzen games, minus a 0-0 draw. Overall, the over 1.5 combined, 9-1 between them so far. Man U, very predictably unpredictable this season, even with their new coach. You don't know what you're going to get yet from this team. They do have the Manchester Derby to look ahead to this weekend, possibly a distraction. I'm just going to ask for at least 2 goals in this game, some way, somehow, over 1.5 between Plzen and Man U. Next up, Bodo Glimt and Besiktas, Norwegian champions. Bodo Glimt host 5th place in the Turkish league. Besiktas neither have found a ton of success in the Europa League. Bodo 17th, 2-1-2, and Besiktas 22nd at 2-0-3. Bodo lost their past 2 in the tournament, 2-1 and 3-2, but they did go toe-to-toe with Man U in the last game. It was a loss, but they could have taken some points in that game. Besiktas lost 2, won 2, and then were upset 3-1 on home soil against Israeli side Maccabi Tel Aviv last round. Besiktas won 1-0 in the league this weekend, but that's their only win in their last 5, just their second win in their last 8. They rarely fail to score, though, as they have goals in 20 of 22 overall matches this season. Bodo Glimt slumped to the finish line, lifting their domestic title this season, and in all competitions they have just 3 wins in their last 10. They clinched the title in beating Lillestrøm 5-2 in their last game, but they've been off now since December 1st. Now, could they be tired, maybe rusty from the celebrations of the domestic title? Possibly, but they too rarely don't score. They've scored goals in 8 straight and 40 of 44 overall games in the course of their season. Now, the frozen plastic pitch in Norway at the Asmira Stadion is always an advantage as well. They last failed to score at home last December, a year ago, and they've only lost 2 of their last 18 recent home games. So to me, you would expect goals in this matchup, as there were when they've played last season when they met in the Conference League group stage, with Bodo winning both games 3-1 and 2-1. Let's also bet on goals here and go both teams to score between Bodo Glimt and Besiktas. Finally, we'll go to Porto in Midtjylland. Porto only won 1 of 5 Europa League games and they're 23rd, but they've kept things interesting. If we look at their score lines, 3-2 loss, 3-3 draw, 2-0 win, 2-1 loss, 2-2 draw. Midtjylland only slightly better. They're 2-1-2 and 20th, but their games have been the opposite, all tight, scoring just 5 times, conceding just 5 times. Both are fighting near the top of their respective leagues. Midtjylland tied in first, being the 2nd seed in Denmark. Porto tied in 2nd, the 3rd seed, just 2 points back of 1st place in Portugal. Porto have scored in all but 1 game in all competitions this season, but coming to this week in relatively so-so form. They only have 1 win in 6 and giving up multiple goals in 4 of 6. The 3 losses, though, in this time have all been on the road. Games at home, the Stadio do Dragão, have been a fortress for Porto, where they have just 1 loss across their last 29 at home in any competition. Midtjylland also struggled in recent weeks with only 2 wins in 7, and only in their last game, a 3-0 win over Velge, have they scored more than 1 goal, while also being shut out 3 times in that stretch. I would expect a Porto win, and they are heavily favored here, minus 300 to minus 400, depending on your sportsbook. But their defense in this tournament has just not been great. If you look at all 22 games Porto has played so far this season in any competition, any tournament, there is one trend that stands out as a 100% lock so far, and that's been the over 1.5. There's been at least 2 or more goals in every Porto game, 22-0 for the over 1.5. So let's just ask for 2 goals in this game. Go over 1.5, Porto Midtjylland, paired with Bodo Glimt, Besiktas, both teams to score, and Viktoria Plzeň, Manchester United, over 1.5. Coming in at plus 116 over at Caesar Sportsbook. I'll summarize these in the graphic at the end of this video. Those are the 5 games that I like this week in the Europa League. What do you think of these games or any others? There's tons of other games on the schedule. Let me know down there in the comments. Let's all get some winners this week.